When it comes to recovery from overeating, there is a really important distinction in your motivation that could change the whole outcome for you. Is it that you actually want to stop overeating, or is it that you feel like you should stop overeating because you don't like the outcome? The outcome could be you're worried about what it's doing to your body. And the difference between whether we want to do something or whether we think we should do something is massive when it comes to motivation. So I'm Sarah and I'm a psychotherapist. I help people heal their relationship with food through individual therapy, group therapy, workshops. It's all online, accessible from anywhere in the world, and you can see more about my services below. It could be that you feel like, well, I do want to stop this behavior and I think I should, but I think I want to because, let's face it, especially if you have bouts of uncontrollable eating, it's really distressing to feel that out of control. But I'm going to give you my favorite question, which really helps to kind of find where you're at from a motivation perspective. And you might have heard me ask this question before. I think I did in a video a long time ago. And it's simply this. And I just want you to notice your reaction. If I could wave a magic wand now and get rid of all desires to overeat, compulsively eat, binge, whatever, you wouldn't be thinking about food all the time. You would be mentally free. You'd have reasonably good health for your age, and you would just be able to get on with life because that desire wouldn't be there. But the price to pay is that you could never, ever, no matter what you did, lose a single pound of weight from where you are today. Would you take it? Just notice your reaction. Don't judge it. Very few people that I've asked this question to, and I've asked it now to probably over 1,000 people, very few people who I ask this question to can immediately answer, yes, I would take it. And some people have a very visceral response in their body, like that strong feeling of resistance. But it's this idea of wanting to change our behavior for changing our behavior's sake, not because we think we should be rewarded with a certain outcome in the future, whether we think that's weight loss, better health, whatever it is. Now, don't be disheartened if you still feel very invested in the outcome of changing the way that you eat. But what we need to do is understand how it might be getting in your way. The challenge is, if you are in a moment going to make a decision about food, and one decision is going to feel like it nourishes you and the other decision feels like it's going to pull you into a binge, in that moment where the pull is to want to go unconscious with food, but the reason for not doing it is some potential reward in the future that you've been struggling to get, potentially for years. You've been trying to get this outcome and haven't been able to. Where's the motivation in that moment to make the decision that feels like you're really taking care of yourself? And I don't mean that in a moralistic, you have to pick super healthy food, but just in a way where it feels like you are taking care of yourself physically and emotionally. Now, if you are still stuck in a should, I feel like I should be changing the way that I eat. The challenge is for many of us with those shoulds is we get a bit of a rebellious response, and we can get ourselves in rebellious eating because it feels like those shoulds can feel like external control and we want to feel free. It's why quite often these government nutrition campaigns, these educational schemes about food only work to a very limited degree, because for many people who struggle with food, information or knowledge is not the problem. They have a lot of nutrition knowledge. In fact, they probably have so much nutrition knowledge that that could be part of the problem, because now they have so much judgment in their head, so many shoulds, and they just keep triggering this reactive part of them that doesn't want to be controlled by the rules. Ideally, we want to get ourselves into a place where the motivation, it comes from us. And every decision can become an opportunity to learn something, to practice something new, and to acknowledge and reinforce when we feel like we made a decision that felt good for us. So the learning something new, that comes from when you make a decision and afterwards you regret it. Recovery from these kinds of food struggles is not about never having food regret. Having food regret is such a natural part of being a human being who eats food. And then a decision being an opportunity to do something different could be an opportunity to try a different decision, but it also could be practicing responding to yourself differently when you make a decision you don't like. If I make a food decision now that afterwards I think, I don't think that was a great idea, I might feel some regret, but I don't beat myself up, because I have practiced responding to myself in a much more compassionate way. And by responding to myself differently, that is part of what brings me just back into balance. And the next bit about really acknowledging when you do something differently. One of the reasons why changing our behavior, particularly around something like food, which can become so habituated, is that so many of the decisions we make are influenced by our past. They're influenced by, what do I normally do in this situation? What do I normally do when my partner goes out and I'm suddenly in the house on my own? What do I normally do on a weeknight at 8 p.m. when the kids are finally in bed? We get into these routines and these patterns, and then our routines and habits just start to feel like who we are. I'm just somebody who can't control themselves around food, eats too much sugar, is only drawn to certain types of foods. But when we recognize this and we can see how many of our decisions are being informed by our brain anticipating and predicting, this is where we start needing to practice different decisions. And different decisions, this is where we need to remove the moralistic. It doesn't always mean somehow better decisions, healthier decisions, always eating less. Different decisions can just be taking a moment to check in with yourself and take a breath. Taking a moment to feel grateful that you have an abundance of food in your life. It could be acknowledging how pleasant it is to have a full stomach. Not stuffed, that's not necessarily fun, but that feeling of feeling full and sated can be a really nice feeling when it's not shrouded in judgment. One of the reasons why this can seem so challenging is because we have such a complicated relationship with ourselves. And we define how we feel about ourselves by what we are or what we're not eating. Or at least if food has become the big problem in your life, you will define how you feel about yourself based on how you're eating. This is why I'm a big fan of parts work. There is a part of you that wants to respect your long-term health. There is a part of you that wants the pleasure of the food. There might be a part of you that wants to go unconscious. There might be a part of you that's trying to restrict. And that's what keeps triggering the compulsive eating. It's important to mention that if you have an accumulation of hunger, because maybe you have been restricting or controlling your food, I should say over controlling your food, then this out of control feeling around food can be a backlash to that, and that needs to be addressed first. There is this assumption often in the intuitive eating world that if you just follow the intuitive eating principles, you will naturally start to just stop eating when your body's had what it needs. And this is really frustrating for people because they think it's why intuitive eating isn't working for them. Because intuitive eating isn't just about the food. There's a principle that never gets spoken about, hardly ever, in the intuitive eating social media sphere, and that is about managing your emotions with kindness and body respect. Both of those things are about your relationship with yourself. And when we improve and work on our relationship with ourselves, making the kind of decisions that feel like it listens to all those parts and reaches this kind of gentle negotiation. It's like sometimes one part's going to win a bit more, the part that wants to eat for pleasure and fun, and sometimes another part is going to win a bit more, the part that is interested more in the long-term health aspect. There's a part that just wants to feel good after you've eaten as well, a part that wants to feel satisfied. But when we're at war with ourselves, we can't hear the parts. The parts get into a battle and then they become very reactive. And then when they become reactive, what feels like happens is one part takes over. I felt like I was two different people. Like there was this person who was so out of control around food, who just didn't seem to give a crap about how I felt or any of that. And there was this other person desperately clinging for control. And these two were just having it out. But here's the thing, when we think of ourselves in parts, what we often do is whichever part is speaking loudest, we identify with that part. So if there's a part that wants to just dive headfirst into the food for the evening, we think, well, that's us. If there's a part that just feels full of shame and self-disgust and that part is active, we think, oh, that's just who I am. So working on our relationship with ourselves is about listening to all the parts of ourselves. And I think it's much easier, personally, I found it much easier to be able to go, oh, there's a part of me that just wants to eat delicious comfort food all day. There is a part of me that wants to do that. But actually by acknowledging that that part is there and listening to all the other parts, we can start to make decisions. I also think sometimes, and this isn't necessarily spoken about so much in intuitive eating, is that when food is tasting really good, sometimes we just don't want it to end. Even though our bodies feel satisfied, we'd had enough. Like psychologically and emotionally, we're really enjoying it. And there's a kind of sadness that can come sometimes when the eating experience is finished for now. And that is much easier to deal with when you're not restricting and you know you can eat again. But I think for some people, that feeling of the food ending has so many connotations potentially that go back to childhood or even pre-verbal. And so there can be this concept of grieving the end of a meal, which is like, oh, I feel kind of sad that that experience is over. And to allow that feeling in your body, which will feel different to the dissatisfaction that comes when you haven't been eating enough. I think sometimes it seems a bit absurd. Why would I feel sad just because the food is finished? But I think when we make a little bit of space for that sadness, it can pass very quickly, especially if we know we can eat again soon. This distinction between wanting and shoulding is sometimes tricky to make that push, but it is enough at this time to want, to recognize that there is an inherent reward to just feeling more regulated with food. There is a mental freedom, an emotional freedom that comes with that. And so for me, because I was somebody who did eat emotionally, even when I wasn't restricting. And I used to think the recovery was about, oh, I should just like not eat when I'm feeling emotional. Because I thought that's what I should do if I wanted the outcome, which was not to be compulsively eating. But actually there was a shift in mentality that happened for me around, actually I want to get better at feeling my feelings, because there's a lot of information in my emotions about what's going on for me. And so rather than thinking about, oh, I need to just figure out how to stop eating when I feel bad, how do I get better at feeling my emotions? And that had a natural releasing of this strong need to numb emotion or to escape myself. I just want to make a last call for my intuitive eating course, which is all about tailoring the intuitive eating approach to make it work for you, and it starts next week. I'll pop details below if you want to join me. I will also link some videos below which talk a little bit more about self-negotiation, a little bit more about emotional eating, because if this video has resonated with you, those videos are going to go into some of those things a little bit deeper. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you on the next video.